You finally get a break. You sit down, put your phone aside, maybe even close your eyes. You tell yourself this is what you needed, but 10 minutes later you don't feel better. You feel worse. Not physically tired. Not like you need more rest. Just heavier. Like something inside you got louder the moment you stopped moving. This isn't rare. It happens to a lot of people. And it's not because you're bad at relaxing or because you didn't do it right. It's because your brain doesn't treat rest the way you think it does. We've been taught that relaxation is supposed to feel good immediately, that if you stop, breathe, and give yourself permission to do nothing, relief should follow. And when it doesn't, when you feel more anxious or restless or even guilty, you assume you failed at something simple. But that's not what's happening. Your brain isn't designed to shift into rest mode the moment you decide to. It doesn't have an off switch. What it has is a cue, a long, unfinished list of things it was holding in the background while you were busy. And the moment you stop, that cue comes forward. Research on cognitive load suggests that when you're actively engaged in tasks, your brain prioritizes immediate demands. It suppresses everything else. Not because those things disappear, but because it doesn't have the bandwidth to process them yet. The moment you step away, that suppression lifts, and everything you weren't thinking about suddenly has space to surface. That's why rest can feel like noise. It's not that you're doing something wrong. It's that your brain is finally doing what it couldn't do before. It's processing. And processing doesn't always feel peaceful. This shows up in everyday moments. You finish work, sit on a couch, and instead of feeling calm, you start thinking about all the emails you didn't send, or the conversation you had earlier that felt off, or the thing you said last week that no one probably remembers but you can't stop replaying. None of that was bothering you an hour ago, but now it is, because now there's room for it. Some people feel this most on weekends. They spend the whole week looking forward to Saturday, and when it finally comes, they feel uneasy, not bored, not lonely, just uncomfortable in a way they can't name. And they fill the day with tasks or errands or scrolling, not because they want to, but because staying still feels wrong. That discomfort isn't a sign that you don't deserve rest. It's a sign that your nervous system is still catching up. Your body might have stopped, but your brain is still running through everything it didn't have time to finish. Studies on arousal regulation show that your nervous system doesn't calm down instantly. It takes time to downshift, and if you've been operating in a heightened state for hours or days, rest doesn't feel like relief at first. It feels like withdrawal. Your brain was relying on momentum, on the structure of being busy, and when that structure disappears, even for 20 minutes, you're left with everything that momentum was covering up. That's why some people feel worse after a vacation. They come back more anxious than when they left. Not because the vacation was bad, but because it gave their brain space to feel things it had been postponing. And those things don't always arrive neatly or at convenient times. This also explains why distraction often feels easier than rest. Scrolling through your phone, watching something in the background, keeping your hands busy. These aren't just habits. They're ways of staying occupied enough that your brain doesn't have room to process. And for a lot of people, that feels safer than sitting with what comes up when they stop. But here's the part that's hard to accept. You're not avoiding rest because you're undisciplined. You're avoiding it because it doesn't feel the way you were told it would. And when something consistently makes you feel worse, it's natural to stop doing it. The problem is that avoidance doesn't make the cue go away. It just delays it. And the longer you delay, the more builds up. So when you finally do rest, the feeling is even heavier. There's also something else happening beneath the surface. When you rest, you're not just stopping activity, you're removing the structure that was holding your attention in place. And without that structure, your mind starts to wander. Not in a peaceful way, in a scanning way. It looks for problems, for unfinished business, for anything that might need your attention. This isn't a flaw, it's a feature. Your brain is wired to detect threats and gaps, and in the absence of external demands, it turns inward and starts searching. That's why rest can feel like worry, because your brain interprets the lack of structure as an opportunity to audit everything you've been ignoring. And most of the time, that audit doesn't feel good. You might notice this when you lie down at night. The moment your head hits the pillow, your mind starts listing things. Things you forgot to do, things you need to do tomorrow, things that don't even matter but suddenly feel urgent. It's not insomnia, it's your brain finally getting the chance to speak. And during the day, when you try to take a break, the same thing happens. You sit down, and instead of peace, you get a mental rundown of everything that's still unresolved. Your brain isn't punishing you, it's just doing its job, but it doesn't feel like help. It feels like noise. This is why a lot of people describe rest as feeling guilty, not because they believe they don't deserve it, but because the moment they stop, they're confronted with everything they're not doing. And that confrontation doesn't come with clarity, it comes with pressure. Research on self-regulation suggests that when you rest, you're also removing the external validation that comes from being productive. And without that validation, your brain starts questioning whether you're doing enough, whether you're falling behind, whether this break is justified. It's not a conscious thought, it's a background hum, and it makes rest feel like a risk. This doesn't mean rest is bad for you. It means rest is not the same as relief, and we've been using those words interchangeably for so long that we've forgotten they describe different things. Relief is when the pressure goes away. Rest is when you stop adding to it. And sometimes, stopping is when you finally feel how much pressure was there all along. That realization can be uncomfortable, because it means that rest isn't always going to feel good, and it means that feeling worse after resting doesn't mean you failed. It might just mean your brain is doing what it's supposed to do. It's catching up. It's processing. It's trying to make sense of everything you didn't have time to think about while you were moving. And that process doesn't happen in 5 minutes. It doesn't happen in one sitting. It happens slowly, unevenly, and often without you noticing, but it only happens when you give it space. This doesn't mean you shouldn't rest. And it doesn't mean rest is pointless. It just means you might need to stop expecting it to feel a certain way. Because if you keep measuring rest by whether it makes you feel immediately better, you're going to keep thinking you're doing it wrong. Rest isn't always soft. Sometimes it's just the absence of forward motion. And in that absence, things surface. Not because something's broken, but because something's finally been given space. So if you've ever felt worse after trying to relax, you're not alone. And you're not broken. You're just human. And your brain is working exactly the way it was built to, even when that doesn't feel the way you thought it would. You don't need to fix this. You just need to know that it's normal, and that the discomfort you feel when you rest isn't a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's a sign that you're finally giving your brain permission to do what it couldn't do before, and that takes time, more time than we're usually willing to give it.